All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being able to join today. My name is Sasha Kelchevkorn from Realm of Caring Foundation, and I am so pleased to be able to introduce and have with us here today Tammy Pettigrew, who is also known as the Cannabis Cutie. And I find that to be I just find your content and the name to be so endearing. And I know that your handle on Instagram is the Cannabis Cutie, and you also have your website, cannabiscutie.com. But Tammy speaks across the nation, and she's debunking cannabis myths. She's focusing on advocacy, science, education, history, business, just kind of the whole kit and caboodle. And so it's really great to have here to share your experience. Thank you, Tammy, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And so we do have questions to get to. We put out a call out to our community, both of our communities, for questions, and I'll have the Q&A up for individuals who want to write in as we're going. But while I have you here, and while we have been focusing on Autoimmune Awareness Month, I would just really love if you could speak to your own experience. You have so many different important projects you've worked on, and we'll get to all of those as well too. But I would just love to speak to your experience with cannabis, what led you to it, and then I know that you suffer with your own autoimmune disease, and so just maybe a little bit about that to just kind of get the stage set.
Yeah, so my usage started with cannabis when I was 19. I had recently got a 0.87 GPA my first semester in college. And the kid that lived on my floor that was like the resident pothead that we all judged was the only one to make the honor roll. So that finally is what allowed me to want to try the plant, because I'm like, hey, the DARE program said it was supposed to be vice versa. And once I tried the plant, it was like I could sleep better. I felt better about life in the world. I was happy. I could eat. There was just so much that I felt like was fixed inside of me once I started consuming the plant. And from that moment on, I did not shut up about talking about weed. It was always something that I talked about. Um, so last October, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder that takes about 10 years to get diagnosed for. It's like 0.5% to 2% of the population has it. And it's called Ankylosing spondylitis. So not only was I knowing that this was helping me, it was absolutely helping me get through everything that I was dealing with. I knew I had some kind of autoimmune issue, had no idea what it was, but it literally takes over my life at times. And from 2021 to about December of last year, I was very sick, very, very sick. So um, my doctors, my family, they're all curious how I made it this far without any kind of traditional medicinal intervention from like the pharmaceutical industry. And 100% it was cannabis the entire way, protecting me, helping me feel better, helping me get into a state where I can heal and survive. So for me, cannabis started off as this thing that was saving me. Unbeknownst to me, it was saving me in more ways, which, you know, blows my mind, because this was all discovered after the Cannabis Cutie. And it's like, whoa, just still processing how this plant really has been there for me.
That's incredible. And that's the thing too, when it comes to autoimmune conditions, it's typically treatment resistant, takes forever to finally get a diagnosis to even know how to go about having a treatment. And you had already incorporated it into your life. And so it's probably, I'm sure that the doctors are like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? So that's really great that you had that to lean into.
Yeah.
Um, And then so when you founded Cannabis Cutie, and I know I'm kind of jump around a little bit with our questions, a lot of the community that wrote in and asked questions for us at Realm of Caring, we have a lot of moms. So whether or not they're caregiving for a kiddo, caregiving for a grandparent, a parent, a spouse, they usually are considering themselves last. And so there were some questions that came in, but just what has your experience been overall as being a mom and being in this cannabis space? Because if we can couple Autoimmune Awareness Month with Women's History Month, just what has your experience been with that?
Oh gosh. There was a period where I did not want my children to know anything about it. But they would see me drinking wine, and it finally clicked for me one day. I was doing a live in my backyard with my friends, and we had champagne and we had joints. And one of my children walked out there, and I hid the joint under the table. But the champagne, I didn't do
Mhm,
anything to try to hide it. And I was like, wait, wait, wait. One of these is harming my body and the other one is helping. Like, what am I doing? Um, and then shortly thereafter, the pandemic hit. And that's when I had the opportunity to finally grow my own cannabis outdoors. Um, and that was when I explained to my children after the process was done what was so evil about those plants. And they
mhm,
were just really confused and had no idea what I was talking about. So I finally explained to them that this plant can help with their eczema and it can help with people's brains and it can help cure cancer. But a police officer is going to come to your school and tell you the exact opposite, and you cannot correct him. um, and that was kind of the beginning. And now, when we go to family functions, they definitely can tell the difference between people who are consuming alcohol and the cannabis consumers. And now my daughter is 13 and she wants to try. I am not ready for that. But she does align, cannabis use with, oh, they're calm, they're laughing, they're eating, they're relaxing, versus like the drunk people who are doing things and behaving in ways that my daughter has never seen before.
mhm,
So that was kind of how I began talking to them about it, was through the plant education first. And then I was able to explain this is why mommy uses it. And even
mhm.
more so now that I have my diagnosis, and they did see what happened to me, how I changed so much. And they also saw how cannabis was something that could help. So that was, the organic way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best, is just finding what works for your situation and how can you explain to your kids. One of the moms did write in, she asked, how do you manage consuming as a mom? And then so for her, she's wondering, should I sit down with my kids, have a conversation, or is this something I can reserve for myself? So the way the question's worded, it's almost as if she kind of wants to reserve it to herself, but when the time comes. So for her, what would you advise in her situation?
Yeah, I would tell her to wait until she's ready and comfortable. And then education, that's always the best way. Like, kids genuinely just want the truth about things. And when you don't give them the truth, they know, and they're going to keep hounding you until you get the truth. So if you can really come at a age appropriate level and give them the science and talk to them about how it's helping mommy, that kids just want us to be happy. They just want their mommies to be happy. So if you can talk to them in that sense, and then also make sure that you're still a responsible parent with your usage, I think that's the best approach with children.
Yeah, and I makes me smile because my son's 5 and he's already just wants to know the truth about everything. That's like
Yeah.
exactly what he's seeking.
Mhm.
Um, yes, so that's great. And so again, jumping around with the questions a little bit, but someone said, I'm a mom too, and I don't want to outwardly speak about my medical journey, but I also don't want to feel like I'm hiding something. So was this hard for you to bring up to family and friends?
Gosh, yeah, it was really hard. I stayed in the closet for 10 years, for a full decade, because I was a really good kid who, was square, never was in trouble, got good grades, got all the awards. Academic scholarship. So I was scared because, in Oklahoma in 2008, when I started consuming, it was like the equivalent to crack and heroin. So I was really, really nervous. And then I was judged by a lot of people that I love. My mom tried to do a whole intervention thing. And my brothers were like, she's the most successful one in the family. We're not going there. Like, it's working. So yeah, there was a lot of judgment. And now, those same people are asking me indica or sativa. So
Yes.
yeah, they get over it. You get over it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, someone as for someone brand new to cannabis, what's the right way to go about it to see if this is right for me? These stories are so inspiring. I'd like to try, but of course, previous bias tell me to be nervous.
Oh, yeah. That nervousness actually will play a big part into how the feeling of your experiences. So intentionality is so important with consumption. With mushrooms, we know that. We know not to take mushrooms in a very loud place where we don't know anyone. We might have a really bad experience. And that mindset and that uncomfortableness expands, right? It happens with cannabis too, and a lot of people underplay that fact. So you want to make sure you're not thinking about that job you hate, that relationship that's driving you crazy, those bills that are stressing you out. You really want to set your intention with the plant and say, I'm using this to calm myself. I'm using this for creativity, or I'm using this so that I can get a good night's sleep. That matters so much. And also smelling your cannabis and seeing how your body reacts. That's so important. If you smell it and you're nauseous, please do not consume it. Or you can and then feel terrible. But if you smell it and you react positively, that's something for you. And then most importantly, you have to start low and go slow. Do not go in and try to take a bong rip to try to impress your friends, or take 20 milligrams because you think that you can. You really, really have to be mindful, because this plant can turn on you and you want her to be your ally. So, if you're scared, maybe, find a strain that you really react well to in one hit of a joint or a bowl, or 2 milligrams starting off with edibles, but do not go in with any kind of ego, because this plant will humble you so bad.
So true and so well said. And you do touch upon this in your ebook, which I also love. So can you talk a little bit about like what led you to kind of crafting, helping other people to craft their experiences, and what it were you seeing that was, okay, this is important. More people need to know about this.
Yeah, I think one, the question is in my DMs of like, why do I get anxious sometimes? So that was part of why I wanted to write the ebook. And then I have a cannabis book club that was started in 2020. It'll be 4 this year. And we've read a few books on cannabis and spirituality, and that helped shift my perspective even more of how this is a sacrament that requires respect and mindless use. Of anything that can alter your mind is just not the way to go about it. So that's when I was like, oh, the people need to know this, because we've all had that time where it's like, oh, I didn't like that, or that didn't feel good. So it's just really giving people the proper information so that they can navigate their experiences positively.
Yes, absolutely. So well said. And yeah, the ebook is available on the website on cannabiscutie.com if anybody's interested in it. And so someone asked about, they said they found cannabis to be helpful, but is this something that I need to consume daily or just with a flare up? So I'm assuming this is kind of going on with an inflammatory condition. So what would you say to this person?
Ooh, that one is preference. Some people don't like feeling intoxication,
Yeah.
so they may only want to use during flare-ups where your intoxication is also going to be less because you're dealing with a lot of pain. But daily use, one can try CBD daily. Um, CBD is known to be positive on reducing inflammatory activity within the body. But again, because there's not a lot of studies, we don't know how that can affect somebody with like a rheumatoid arthritis or Hashimoto's. So it really is dependent on the person. And we have to learn how to play our own doctors with this plant. Our doctors cannot give us advice. In fact, I give my doctors advice because they know what I do. And they're like, hey, so how do you deal with pain with this? I'm asking for myself. Like, how do I begin? So, daily use is genuinely up to you. If you feel like you don't need it every day, more power to you. But for someone like myself, I absolutely do. I'm gonna wake up in the morning every morning in pain, and it is what it is. So sometimes it's a topical, sometimes it's um, an edible, but really, it's that's the opportunity for you to really get to know your body and find out what it needs.
Yes, and we find too, just the consumer, the patient, the parent, they're the ones who really have to advocate this within the medical system, and
Yeah.
not to necessarily their fault because it's not something that's taught, but
Right.
it's just the way it is when when it comes to the plant. And it's it's beautiful also to hear that we're learning and expanding, and we can teach medical professionals something if we're going in.
Yeah.
um, so for somebody who doesn't live in a legal state, they're wondering if CBD could be helpful to them.
Yeah, absolutely. CBD is really known to help with, the immune system. Theoretically, like a daily dose of CBD should be equivalent to like another non-steroid and anti-inflammatory medication like ibuprofen. But again, we don't know enough. And then you would have to be the one journaling in your experience and saying, I did this for 30 days. I took this much and I felt better or I didn't. So also learning your dose is important too, because cannabis works on a bell curve. You got to
Mhm,
find that sweet spot. Not enough, there's no therapeutic benefit. Too much, there's no therapeutic benefit,
mhm,
or you feel even worse. So yeah, for CBD, if you don't live in a legal state, is a really good option.
mhm. And then someone asked, do you feel like cannabis enhances the medications given by doctors, or should it be used to replace it?
Ooh,
For
I
people.
would never replace anything until you talk to your doctor. So I think they can work together. Like there have been studies that shown people who are prescribed opioids need less when they combine them with cannabinoids. Um, but I wouldn't just stop treatment altogether. Say if you have glaucoma, you're like, well, this helps my eyes. I would still talk to your doctor about if this is the correct action. Maybe you can do both. But I would never ever replace until you know for a fact that you found relief with the plant. I use it in conjunction with my medications, and I seem to have success there versus when I just try to do it without medicine. I did that for a long time, and those attacks used to beat me up. So now pharmaceuticals are also an ally.
Yeah. And yeah, that's finding the balance, right? It's in finding what works for your lifestyle. And that's something we talk about a lot too with clients is just it's not a one size fits all approach. It
Mhm.
has to be very personalized. And just even when you're drawing from talking about how to experience cannabis and setting, you just really want to make it personal to yourself.
Right.
And do you have a lot of people who come and ask you just like how do you personalize your own experience? Because I know you talk about it in the book, but do you teach on this ever, or do you when you're doing your speaking engagements on how to make it personal?
Yeah, I speak on that quite a bit because I think one of the most common questions is, what's your favorite strain? And the answer is, it depends on how I'm feeling. And it's never orange. It's
Yeah.
never anything citrusy. So yeah, people are curious just for their own journeys. And you really have to get paper and pencil and study yourself, really, really study yourself. And it's such an introspective journey. But when it comes to autoimmune conditions, like especially like with mine with AS, women, it's so hard to get diagnosed with this because they don't take our pain serious. I
Mhm.
went to the hospital and a full blown AS attack, and the ER told me I had a UTI, which was
Oh my
crazy.
God.
I felt so gaslit. I was just beside myself. So especially for women, who are dealing with autoimmune issues, you have to know more than your doctors know. You're the one that's living in your body. So I will preach that until, the end of time, that you have to figure this out
So
until.
in that situation, like how would you advise or help somebody to advocate them for themselves when it comes to that? Like if they go and they just know I have something else going on and maybe this other thing helps, or I'm just looking for something, a diagnosis. How can we encourage, especially women or people who just are not heard in the medical system, encourage them to truly advocate for themselves and what they're going through?
Gosh, for me, I had to get a female woman of color rheumatologist
Mhm.
because my last rheumatologist was like, no, 90% of the people that have AS are white males, which is true because white males are believed when they say they're in pain.
Mhm.
For me, they wanted to see permanent damage before I got my diagnosis. And unfortunately, by the time I got my new doctor, I had that permanent damage that would have been qualified for AS. But if your team is not willing to listen to you or they don't respect what you're saying, that's just not your doctor. And that's
Mhm.
fine. It's, doctors are somebody that you're going to be in a relationship with when you're a sick person. And if you don't like that relationship, break up. and go
Right.
get a new partner. Like there are people that will advocate for you and fight for you. And my doctor fights for me with the insurance companies, with, whoever she has to. But that was the first person that took me serious. She's like, I don't need to see your spine fusing together, and I'll get an MRI if I can't see it on X-ray. But we saw it on X-ray. So
Yes.
um,
Right.
yeah, that's, I would say, one of the biggest tips. Find a care team that really wants to help you and work with you, and they really care about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you use any kind of journaling, or do you recommend journaling for somebody, whether that be journaling, what they're taking, how it's working, what they're feeling, what day? Is that a good part of the process?
Yeah, I would say journal how you feel before you consume. Make sure you document what product you're using, where it's from, strain name, the date it was harvested, any smells, if it smells sweet, citrusy, gassy, record all of that, and then record how you feel 15 minutes after consumption. And then I would say maybe like an hour or a couple hours, and really see
Mhm.
in that sense. That is how I figured out orange terpenes were making me feel so bad. Because sometimes I would smoke and feel good, and sometimes I would smoke and feel bad. And I was able to eliminate that completely from my cannabis diet. And
Yeah.
now I have really good experiences.
Well, that's really good. And that's, yeah, getting to know your personal experience again. And actually, someone did ask, speaking of terpenes, they asked about cannabis for potentially working out. I know this has been kind of bigger in the news, just using it as part of a workout routine, recovery routine, but then also potential terpenes that would be beneficial to somebody who is, I guess, big into working out and want that recovery benefit.
Yeah. So again, personal, because some people really like citrus terps. That's going to like rev up their heart rate, get them to go, go, go. And it's an effective pre-workout for some people. I personally love it for post-workout. Working out puts your body into a state of stress. Obviously, stress is a trigger for a lot of autoimmune disorders. So for me, after I work out, it is so important that I'm working to get my heart rate to come down, and using that intentionality. And cannabis absolutely aids in me feeling calm. So it is a very good post-workout. And then for those people out there that do like the pre-workout drinks that have you jittery, cannabis is absolutely an incredible way to get those jitters to go away post-workout too. So to find a terpene that gives you energy, again, you've got to put on your science hat.
Mhm.
I personally do not have any cannabis that helps me with energy anymore. I have that autoimmune fatigue that
Mhm.
is just, if you have it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So again, I know I keep saying it over and over, but that is another personal question.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody asked about research for pain and inflammation. And I think when it comes to pain and inflammation, those might be among the top for what has been researched a lot. Would you agree, or would that there's a good amount of research that someone could dive into if they were looking specifically when it comes to pain and inflammation in cannabis?
Oh yeah, there's tons of research out there, not coming out of the United States.
Mhm.
Israel, Italy, Canada, those are countries that have definitely looked at this, especially when it comes to adolescents. But we know that the CB2 receptors are responsible for modulating the immune system. And then we also know that cannabis is a really good um, pain alleviator. And professional athletes have been talking about this for years and years and years. So PubMed is my favorite place to go for anything health related. And then also, if you see things that are alarming, make sure you look at who's funding it, who brought on the study. Typically, you can, if it's government funded, you're like, oh yeah, this is why they're saying this. But I like to go to outside the US for my information for the most part.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And somebody talked about smoking weed as their preference for anxiety. And I think that this kind of brings on another point, because I know there's a cohort of individuals who are also nervous about inhaling.
Mhm.
And just, if there is a stress on respiratory tract, is there a balance or a way to if that's the way, the medium that works for you, so that way maybe you don't have those residual effects, or anything that any advice you can offer on that?
Yeah, for me, I prefer inhalation methods. It's actually really beneficial for my asthma. So, inhalation methods are not a new form of medicine. Um, as an asthmatic, when I was a child, I had 11 medications and about six were inhalers or breathing treatments. So, inhaling medication is a thing. We think smoking is bad and cancerous because of cigarettes, right? So cigarettes, the way they are grown, they end up creating their own radioactivity in the tobacco, and that radioactivity is carcinogenic. It's like doing 30 x-rays a day for a pack of cigarettes. Um, it is absolutely terrible. But if you want to consume with smoking and actually have protection for your lungs from a study that came out of UCLA, you want to make sure that your glass is clean. Please do not smoke out of moldy, gross water. Just clean it. um, and then I prefer hemp products. So if it's going to be papers, it's going to be hemp papers or like a hemp blunt wrap. And that is where I have the least amount of irritation. Regular papers, rice papers, I am going to wheeze like
Mhm.
nobody's business, as well as dirty glass and just, bong rips in general. It's too much smoke. So, um, I have these here, the Cannabis Cutie papers
Oh,
that are
nice.
fully hemp that I love. And then there's brands that are really consistent with their hemp products. But I would say that's the best way to go about it. And then that study is out of UCLA. If you'd like to see, they did a study on tobacco smokers, cannabis only smokers, and non-smokers. And the group that fared the best happened to be the cannabis smokers that never used tobacco.
That's amazing. And when we upload this to YouTube, I can put the link to that study in the comments there. Um, and yes, that people are also agreeing with you who are enthusiasts and just someone said that their doctor tried to diagnose them with COPD and he's taken herbs such as cloves, etc., and noticed that smoking papers versus blunt wraps aren't as mild. So I guess yeah, it depends on for the person.
Yeah.
But I love that you're bringing up the glass, the water, the papers, because something that we always want to emphasize is that the quality of your product and how you're consuming your product absolutely matters. And so when it comes to somebody who might be new to the space or they're not, they've been a long time user, what are some things that they could consider when they really want to be knowledgeable and educated and find those quality products? What should they be looking for?
Ooh, gosh, you want to always look at the certificate of analysis. That's their testing results.
Mhm.
You want to make sure that it's healthy cannabis. If you're buying from the legacy market because you live in a non-legal state, just do a good job of inspecting your cannabis. If it looks weird, I would take this is something you're putting into your body. And if you're somebody with an autoimmune disorder, you want to be really mindful of what you're putting in your body.
Mhm.
Um, and then also check the dates on things. If it's been sitting for a long time, especially in a moist environment, mold could have grown on that plant. So, proper storage. And then if you're a sick person, if you can get it from a legal store, I know it's so much more expensive, but that might be a much better option for you. And then also filter as much smoke as you can. And once you find something or a brand that you like, stick with it. Consistency is really hard in cannabis. And I would say once you find a brand that your body seems to really respond well to their product, I would just stick with them. Um, this isn't, for me, it's not beneficial to just go get the free pre-roll at all the dispensaries because
Right,
hey, I
right.
don't know what's in there, what kind of quality of product it is, and it might make me feel worse. And, we're fighting inflammation here.
When you held up your filter, somebody asked, what exactly does the filter help with?
So this helps filter out smoke. All of, when I take this filter out when it's done, it's like sticky. So it's like catching additional resins that are coming through the smoke and filtering it as much as possible. Obviously, I'm still going to get smoke in my lungs, but these things can get pretty gross. This is a Moose Labs, but they have them. You can put them on your joints, you can put them on your bongs. This works for my Puffco. Um, but it's just another way of trying, doing your best to like remove the bad
Mm-hmm.
so that you can just get the good.
Yes, absolutely. And then someone else did ask about dry herb vaporizing. Any thoughts on that?
Um, Gosh, I've stepped away from that because the batteries and inhaling whatever that is, or just the inputs that they're using sometimes makes my lungs feel horrible. There
Mhm.
are some companies that have great products like Puffco, but there are some, uh, a- and then we just have heard too many horror stories about vaporizing and people being hospitalized because of it. So I've kind of taken a step away because I have asthma and I just don't, I'm too worried about it.
Mhm.
So dry vaping, if you have a good product like a PAX, I'm all for it. But yeah, it's a little controversial. We're still learning about
Yeah.
what what is this battery exposure? What is all of this doing?
Absolutely. And I don't want to put you on the spot because it's very true. It is something that we are still learning. We're still collecting data on. We're still just learning the potential residual effects that might happen or the benefits. There's just so much that we still need to learn. And so I'm glad that you brought that up too. It's just no one person could be an expert because every day there's just something new out there.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, that was really, really important. Okay, so I think we're kind of getting through our questions, which is great. And I do want to just bring it back to because we're rounding out the half hour. And I really want to bring it back to just your book, who's it for? And like what would somebody get from that they could just take from them, or what could they take from this conversation, this interview, if they're maybe new or like wanting to experiment, what could they take and go on with their life with?
Gosh, I hope the book and this whole discussion would give them the confidence to not fear a plant. It is not benign. We know that it is very powerful, but information is always something I think that if people knew better, they would approach it differently. So I would hope that it inspires them to take that leap of faith and to begin their journey with caution and with love and with intention, and or educate other people who are curious about it. I'm just one person, and when I first started doing this, there was not a lot of this content on the internet. And now there's so many people, but we still need millions more to really get this plant to live in some sort of normalcy and not always be demonized. And there's no need to fear it. She's here to help you, here to benefit you. You just really need to give her that guidance so that she can.
I love that. I love the way you say just confidence, cautionary, love, respect. I love how much you respect the plan and how much it comes up in conversation. I think that's such a great way to change our mindset from fear to a place of respect and learning.
Mhm.
But thank you, Tammy, so much. I know that as soon as I close this out, they'll probably have people asking me for where's part two. So we might have to do this again. But thank you for joining us in the Realm of Caring community. I'm so glad that we could bring our communities together for this really informative and engaging session. And we'll put all of where everybody can find Tammy on the description below when this is posted on YouTube, so everybody can find her and find out more.
Thank you
So
so
thank you.
much, Sasha. It was great being here. And if you guys have any other questions, just DM me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.